Yes, we're going to have our final panel of the day, Rights of Nature as a Systemic Solution, Protecting and Defending the Places We Live, which is just an incredible body of work, really, that many people around the world are getting more and more engaged in. And I'm just very, very thankful for the powerful leaders that will be speaking to you today about this vital work and their leadership and their projects and ideas. But before we start this next panel, I am going to give a little background about rights of nature. Like a lot of the other panels, I think most people are familiar with a lot of the topics, but many people have asked us, well, what is rights of nature? So I need to give a little bit of an introduction so we can have some context for this conversation. And then we'll delve into it with all of the different presenters. I've been very honored to be advocating for rights of nature, sitting on the executive committee for the Global Alliance for Rights of Nature, which you can learn more about in the chat. A really powerful coalition that is working on the rights of nature work. And as we have been addressing in the Assembly, we are living in a time in which we really must change everything about how we're living with Mother Earth and each other. This has come up again and again, no matter what topic we're addressing. The urgency of the climate and ecological crisis demand that we completely redesign our economic, social, and legal systems. And again, we've been talking about this in different ways, that the systems we're in don't address how we need to change at a systemic level. In our global movements for rights of nature, we're looking for a revolutionary and evolutionary change for society. And at the heart of it, we're asking, how can we transform our dysfunctional environmental laws and neoliberal economic systems that are literally destroying people and planet? And I want to acknowledge that much of the vision and worldview of the rights of nature framework comes from Indigenous peoples around the world and their knowledge of the natural laws of Mother Earth and having respected those laws. After decades of environmental protection laws, our modern legal systems have failed to prevent the increasingly grave threats of global warming, degradation of Earth's sacred systems of life, and the growing displacement and death of humans and other species. In particular, there are ever-growing threats to Indigenous, Black, and Brown, and frontline communities who bear the worst impacts of disasters because of environmental racism and other societal injustices. So to truly live sustainably and live in harmony with the Earth, we need to change the very foundations, the very structural DNA of our legal frameworks to respect the natural laws of the Earth. And today, the majority of the world's legal frameworks are based on treating nature as property. And that's really the crux of it. And again, it comes from this ideology of supremacy that we've been talking about in capitalism. Our living, life-giving rivers, forests, and mountains are treated as property to be sold and consumed. As property, these natural communities and ecosystems are not recognized as right holders. So in most legal systems, because nature is property, it's invisible to courts. And by maintaining the current structure of law, we are furthering a dangerous human relationship to the natural world of ownership and exploitation. So we have to ask ourselves, why haven't we stopped these destructive actions that are not only lethal, but also currently legal under our laws? We need an entirely different legal configuration that recognizes that Earth's living systems are not the enslaved property of humans. A primary premise of the rights of nature movement is that in order to ensure a thriving future, humans must reorient themselves from an exploitative and ultimately self-destructive relationship with nature to one that honors the deep interrelationship of all life and contributes to the health and integrity of the natural world. We need to have a relationship that upholds reciprocity. An essential step in achieving this is to create a system of jurisprudence that sees and treats nature as a fundamental rights-bearing entity and not as mere property to be exploited. In our movements, we advocate that breaking out of the human-centered limitations of our current legal systems is one of the most transformative and highly leveraged actions that humanity can take to create a healthy and just future for all. And as climate disruption and environmental degradation increases globally, it could not be more important to highlight that exploitation and extractivism is the result of patriarchal societies, colonization, racism, and capitalism, which are all based upon the same systems and ideologies of power over and exploitation of women, Indigenous peoples, people of color, and the land. So it's clear that the global community needs to address these systems of oppression in an intersectional manner to move towards justice, real solution. And rights of nature can offer a vital pathway forward in this effort. And that's one of the things that's so powerful about it. It's a big enough movement and broad enough in its concepts to really manage this moment. What we're seeing in our collective work globally is that people's movements are rising to say no to the commodification of Mother Earth or the sky. Our earth and atmosphere are not for sale. We don't want our sacred earth, water, and air and forest in the marketplace. We don't want to see carbon offset programs, carbon credit schemes, ineffective net zero pledges. These are false solutions to the climate crisis. Instead, we want to see pollution stopped at the source, extractive economies transformed, and for governments, corporations, all different actors, and all of us to live with respect and reciprocity for Mother Earth. We can't just keep taking and taking, or very simply, we're not going to survive. So like Mother Earth's immune system, people are rising up in their communities worldwide to say yes to rights of nature. Let's change our laws to live in harmony with life. And in fact, this is an ever-growing movement. At the national level in 2008, Ecuador became the first country in the world to recognize rights of nature in its constitution. Local rights of nature ordinances in the United States today are protecting communities from harmful practices such as shale gas drilling and fracking. And there have been over 36 ordinances that have passed in the US. The Ponca Nation has made history as the first tribe in the US to recognize rights of nature in law to protect their territory from fossil fuel extraction. The New Zealand Parliament has recognized the Wanganui River having legal standing. The Colombian Supreme Court has recognized rights of the Amazon River ecosystem. And I could go on, and you can check the link to learn more about this. And as the UN Secretary General has stated, rights of nature is one of the world's fastest growing environmental movements, and there are now advancements in over 39 countries. So yes, rights of nature is an idea whose time has come. And we really want to push forward this agenda. It is part of our call to action from the Assembly, and we want to ensure that rights of nature is front and center at COP30. And with that, I'm very honored to introduce an amazing group of rights of nature leaders to further this discussion. We'll be first hearing from Callie Veelenturf. She is the founder and executive director of the Leatherback project from Panama. Then we'll be hearing from Debbie Ngarewa-Packer, who is Maori and is Tet Paiti Maori Wani co-leader and elected MP for the Te Tai Hanuin, and she is from New Zealand. Then we'll be hearing from Shannon Biggs, who is the co-founder and director of Movement Rights in Turtle Island, USA. And then we will be hearing from Marie Lutz Canaquiri Mura Kariri, who is Kukama and president of Huaynakana Kamatahuara, the Kana Women's Association, and also really wonderful, a Goldman Prize winner from Peru. Very exciting award that she has just recently won. And so with that, I'm really honored to bring into the conversation, Callie, you have the floor.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Osprey. Again, my name is Callie Veelenturf. I'm a marine biologist and conservationist, and it's really an honor to be among you today on behalf of nature to share space with people I admire so deeply and to talk about a subject I care about so much. I've had quite a winding road in transitioning from simply studying nature and marine wildlife to advocating for nature's intrinsic rights. And what I wanted to share with you today is the story of the evolution of the recognition of the rights of nature in Panama. So in 2019, I received an early career grant from the National Geographic Society to identify and study sea turtle nesting and foraging sites in the Pearl Islands archipelago in the Gulf of Panama. We documented over 20 sea turtle nesting and foraging sites of 4 species, and we also documented the threats that they were facing, such as fisheries bycatch, illegal human consumption of sea turtle meat and parts, and the illegal wildlife trade of the hawksbill sea turtle shell. During this time in the field, I was healing from an incredibly transformative personal experience that I had earlier the same year at my first job as a marine biologist, where I needed to defend my human rights within the US legal system. But during this period of learning how to defend my own human rights, as I know a lot of us have had to, I found that when all else has failed, defending my rights was what protected me. And I realized that in the protection of nature, all else has really failed. So, in trying to process and move on in a positive way from such a negative experience, I wanted to learn how to better protect nature through defending nature's rights in my work. And I found that in our legal systems, nature's rights are largely not recognized. So her rights couldn't be defended in the way that I had just defended my own. So I purchased the book, The Rights of Nature, A Legal Revolution That Could Save the World by David Boyd, and I was reading it in my tent on the sea turtle nesting sites in Panama. In addition to reading this book, I was also receiving these sporadic internet updates from around the world of the wildfires that were burning in the Amazon and Australia, and I felt so desperate to do something big. So in February of 2020, I decided to propose a new rights of nature law in Panama. I felt like I had simply nothing to lose in trying. So I made the case to Panama's First Lady, Yasmin Cortizo, and Congressman Juan Diego Vazquez that recognizing the rights of nature could be the most impactful way to cause a cascading system effect throughout society to help humanity find harmony with nature. And to my surprise, they agreed, and we spent the next 2 years during the pandemic drafting, debating, and revising the law together with the public, the Parliament, and the Earth Law Center. And as many of you know, but I'm incredibly excited to share, and it never gets old, that just 2 years later, on February 24th, 2022, the president signed this new law into effect. So nature in Panama now has a long list of recognized rights, including the right to exist, persist, regenerate her vital cycles, be restored, and even have legal representation in court. So today, any member of Panama society can bring violators of these rights to court on nature's behalf. And with this initiative, Panama became only the third country in the world with a national level rights of all nature legal provision. And there are several ecocentric principles that are also identified in this law that will aid and have aided in its implementation. My favorite of which is in dubio pro natura, which basically just means when in doubt, side with nature. And also incredibly importantly, Panama's national rights of nature law mandates that indigenous and local peoples must be an integral part of interpreting and applying the rights of nature law in practice. In just the 3 years and 4 months since the national law has been passed, it's already been implemented 5 times in all 3 branches of government, the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. So quickly, I wanted to share these 5 implementation measures. The first one being that one of the major issues that I had seen in the field was the lack of implementation of existing laws that were protecting sea turtles from the illegal wildlife trade. So I collaborated with the Ministry of the Environment, Fundación Tortugas del Mar, to train over 2,000 soldiers from Panama's Air and Navy Service, or SENAN, in the identification of a legal turtle shell product to aid in implementation. Our collaboration grew over the years to discussions about how SENAN actually had a constitutional responsibility to protect all living beings in Panama, not just human beings. And so with this part of their constitution, we were able to launch a new branch of their institution, an environmental committee specifically tasked with developing and implementing mechanisms to respect and uphold and defend the rights of nature. Okay, the second implementation measure. In 2022, Pana Tortugas, which is a Panamanian sea turtle conservation network, proposed a new sea turtle conservation law to Congressman Gabriel Silva. During the debating period, I worked with the Ministry of the Environment and the Earth Law Center to propose a new article of the law that recognized the specific rights of sea turtles. Unbelievably, this law passed in March of 2023, containing the Sea Turtle Rights article, making Law 371 the first time in the world that any marine species group had its specific rights recognized on a national level. This article reads that the state will guarantee that natural and legal persons protect the rights of sea turtles and their habitats, such as the rights to live and have free passage in a healthy environment, free of contamination and other anthropogenic impacts that cause physical and health damage, such as climate change, pollution, fisheries bycatch, coastal development, and unregulated tourism, among others. It still blows my mind that this is passed in national law. Okay, the third implementation measure In November of 2023, after more than 1 month of public protest in the streets, the Supreme Court of Panama ruled to close down a copper mine in a key biodiversity area, citing many environmental protections, but including the National Rights of Nature law, specifically quoting the highest interest of nature principle and the intrinsic value of natural ecosystems. The fourth implementation measure is also a Supreme Court ruling that closed down a major highway development project from Pacific to Atlantic Panama through a terrestrial migratory corridor, citing the precautionary principle of the rights of nature law. Lastly, and most recently, the Leatherback project team, Ministry of the Environment, and Fundación Tortugas del Mar have been working with the local community of Saboga Island to track endangered green and hawksbill sea turtles in the Pearl Islands archipelago to understand their habitat use. We identified a new to science foraging site of these two species around Saboga Island and proposed that Saboga become a national wildlife refuge to better protect this place and all of the other threatened species that call it home. The president signed the Saboga Wildlife Refuge into effect just this last September, including the recognition of the intrinsic rights of nature throughout the refuge, the rights of sea turtles, as well as the national responsibility to uphold the rights to restoration and restore the degraded coral reef ecosystems. So this was the first creation of a protected area through the implementation of the rights of nature law. So in this process of using science to advance the rights of nature, I've been so excited to see how scientists and community leaders may be able to use local information to generate these really tangible proposals of advancing the rights of nature everywhere. And with that, I'm really honored to share that just 1 month ago, the National Geographic Society, in collaboration with the Alfred Kobacker and Elizabeth Trimbach Fund, and myself, launched Nat Geo's newest program called For Nature. The Nat Geo Society has committed to supporting the advancement of the rights of nature worldwide by leveraging their expertise in science, education, and storytelling to bring about the ultimate level of protection for nature. We will be funding at least 15 science-backed rights of nature initiatives in over 10 countries that are yet to be identified. So I'd love to hear from people if you want to apply. I can't wait to collaborate with more scientists and local leaders from around the world to bring about this vital rights of nature system change together. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the incredible work you're doing and all the breakthroughs that you've had. And I know I was with you in New York during the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues when there was a gathering at the UN around rights of nature work. And I know you gave a presentation there, and I believe won an award as well from the Explorers Club. So you've got a lot of headway in the work you're doing, and just want to congratulate you for your work. And with that, I'd love to hear from Debbie from New Zealand. If you could please bring her onto the panel. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou, ko Debbie Ngarewa-Packer hau, ko au te co-leader mō te Pāti Māori, ko au he uri o Taranaki, ka noho au ki Aotearoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Debbie Ngarewa-Packer, and I am a Māori of Ngāti Ruanui, Rauru, Ngāruahine descent, based in Taranaki on the west coast of the North Island in Aotearoa, you may know as New Zealand. One of the things that I've been asked to speak about is the rights of nature as a systemic solution, and I'm just really humbled and excited to be here amongst you all. As Māori, our whole world view is that land, known as whenua, our whole environment is more than a physical resource. It is about our whakapapa, our lineage, who we are, how we connect to our ancestors, our identity, and significantly about our responsibilities. We are raised to believe that we are descendants of nature, of our environment. And through looking after our land, nurturing it for future generations, it teaches us about how we sustain our people, how we sustain ourselves physically, spiritually, and also the role we have as guardians of our whenua. And this relationship is hugely reciprocal. So, for example, we believe that the rights of water, first and foremost, belong to water. Then the second rights of our wai or our water is to sustain us as humans. And the third right is to ensure that it's sustainable. So if you can just capture that worldview that we have, is that the first right of our resources, of our water, of our land, of our maunga, are actually for our water, our land, and our maunga, our mountain. So any land loss or degradation is not just about, for us economically, it's actually spiritually, culturally, and also the focus on the generational harm. So, and to go along this path, it also means that for us, whenua carries a deep sense of interconnection. And when you give birth and there's an umbilical cord that is connected to placenta, that is the depth of whenua. So when we give birth to our babies, the placenta of that baby goes into the whenua to show that deep spiritual whakapapa genealogical connection. And it is that sustains life, and it is in the womb of earth that sustains life for our future generations. So I guess it's like a lot of other Indigenous peoples, our natural resources, our is seen as a source of life. And the same can be said for the ocean, for the moana, is that, when you rock and you're holding a baby, that is the vibration of the water. When you are impregnated through the semen, and when you are carrying a baby in your womb, that is the water, the way of the ocean. So we are born and we connect to the ocean or to be not having wakapapa and not being able to have the next generation. So I hope that explains that whole connection of life force and Māori and the world that we have as Indigenous peoples. I live here in Taranaki, where we have our mountain. And one of the most significant things about our maunga, Taranaki maunga, is that it's just recently come through a settlement. And like many other Indigenous peoples across the world, we had some horrific colonization, experiences of colonization, which displaced us and displaced our connection with our environment, and saw the degradation of our native resources, natural resources such as our mountain. And what we've been able to do with redressing the, I think, 1.2 million acres of land, including our mountain that were confiscated, is we've been recently able to, as the Taranaki tribes, redress and emphasize the restoration of our mountain and the restoration of our name, of our mountain, who had been called by the colonizers Mount Egmont, has now been returned and restored to his wakapapa name, Taranaki. We've now been able to, through this legal redress, have the recognition of our maunga as a living being, which means then we're able to re-establish the traditions and the tikanga, and most significantly, the legal protection of our mountain. It has taken many, many years and many, many goes to get this right. And I'm not confident the government we have in Aotearoa would have agreed to it right now. But we are now able to ensure our connection, the well-being and the health of our mountain, our maunga, for future generations. And the mountain, our maunga, is considered the utmost ancestor, tupuna, and the connections and the stories ceremonially that we have of our mountain are now able to be restored. So it is it's a big deal for us to be able to not only have the recognition of our mountain's prestige, but also our role as guardians, as kaitiaki, reinforced, and our ability to be hands-on with the care of our mountain as the Indigenous peoples of Aotearoa. I can't tell you how emotional and spiritual that felt for us to finally see our tupuna being looked after. So we believe that these the issues for us in the climate change is actually about bringing life stories and the Indigenous connection to nature, and the fact that we have Indigenous-led solutions, and the fact that we have the ability to reignite the well-being and restore the well-being of nature. So I hope that these experiences that we're dealing, I know this is a short oversight of some very long, heavy things for us, but I hope that sharing these stories can give you some hope of what we believe for us as Māori. Once we're left and able to look after our taonga, able to look after nature, that we can restore it and bring it back to the beautiful way that everyone in the world can look after. Nō reiri, te āhuatanga o tā tātou tupuna, ngā mihi aroha ki a koutou katoa. Have a great forum. Kia ora.
Such a beautiful, beautiful presentation from Debbie from New Zealand, and just really powerful. As I'm introducing Shannon Biggs next, I just wanted to mention that through the organization that Shannon Biggs is the co-founder of Movement Rights, they had organized a fact-finding delegation to go to New Zealand some years ago, which I was very honored to participate in, to also spend time with Maori who were establishing the rights of nature or the rights of personhood for the Wanganui River, which is also in New Zealand. And it was just so powerful to be there, to see this victory, to learn from that particular branch of rights of nature work, and to experience this victory after over 100 years of struggling to respect Indigenous views of how to live with the land in this way of recognizing the land's rights. And I remember us being by the Wanganui River and one of the Maori women sharing with us a saying that they have, which is, "I am the river and the river is me. I am the river and the river is me." And just that understanding, again, that we are the water, we are part of nature, and having this other worldview about our relationship to our relatives of the land and how that can be translated into law. And I think it's one of the most powerful aspects of the rights of nature work is it's a legal framework, but it is also a cultural framework about the shift in how we can live with nature in a very different way that we've been talking about for many days now at this assembly. And with that, a little story behind introducing Shannon Biggs, who is the co-founder of and director of Movement Rights. You have the floor, Shannon, and so good to see you. I think you're on mute. There you go.
All right. Am I good now?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Osprey, and thank you to the speakers. Hola, kia ora, and greetings, relatives. It's really an honor to be here and be part of this global assembly that WECAN puts on. It's just such a powerful, powerful gathering of conversations. And I know that my colleague, Julia Kampornik, was supposed to be here, but is traveling. And Casey Kampornik, who's also part, in addition to being part of WECAN and the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, is also part of Movement Rights. So I have their permission to share a little bit about the work that that they lead with Movement Rights in their territory as well. But I really wanted to thank Osprey for your introduction of rights of nature. So often we talk about it so often we think everybody really understands it and knows what it is. But it definitely bears repeating because we're talking about a huge culture shift, not just a legal shift. So, we have human laws over here that say we can legally blow the tops off of mountains. And then over here, we have the laws of the natural world, which govern the way we live. And those two, we need to bring human laws into balance with the laws of the natural world. And rights of nature really seeks to do that particular piece. So the real power of rights of nature isn't just in changing the law. That's a super important aspect, but it's about changing the culture. And it's so important, as Osprey said, to mention that this is an Indigenous-led globally. This is an Indigenous-led movement. And, there's so many reasons why that is such an important piece of this work, but not just including the statistic that so many people know that Indigenous people worldwide are protecting about 80% of the world's remaining biodiversity. And there's a reason for that. And that connection and that spiritual relationship with the earth is something that is part of that cultural transformation to bring us all back into right relationship with the earth, no matter where we're from, or where we call home. And part of that is also just thinking about that property piece that Osprey was saying, which is that we have to stop thinking that we are owners of nature, which is what our current laws establish. They say that, law is human property. And of course, with human property, we can do whatever we want. And we're seeing the results of that. I mean, that's climate chaos is the direct result of that kind of behavior. So this idea that also as humans, we're here to protect nature. I think a better framing for us and for the rights of nature is as much as every other life form, we are nature. And as Casey Camp Hornicks often says, we are not humans protecting nature, we are nature protecting itself. And this is really part of what this work is. So recognizing the earth as a living system of which humans are a part rather than as human property to be owned, destroyed, um, uh, is really fundamental because that property understanding is rooted in everything from our environmental policies, our economic policies, our it's in the DNA of the trade deals and climate negotiations at the United Nations. And as Osprey said, we can't really say it enough. We have to stop treating the earth as if it's something we can buy or purchase and treating and putting a price tag on the processes of what the earth is. We have to start valuing it as like I said, greetings, relations. We are all connected, not just to each other, but through the water we drink and everything that we eat. We are the earth, and we have to think holistically about that. And so shifting laws to think holistically is what rights of nature is, where the power really is in this movement. And it is the fastest growing movement in the world. When I started talking about rights of nature in the middle 2000s, when I was, very, I was so young then. Um, I like to say I was 12, which everybody knows is not true. But it was really just a handful of people speaking about it from a legal perspective, and the idea that this was just a legal shift, um, uh, which it is, but that it's this larger cultural understanding that has been led by Indigenous people since the beginning of time, and so globally, we're seeing the growth of this movement. There are now, a couple of hundred laws taking, root in, I don't know, over 40 jurisdictions, national jurisdictions from state, national, local level around the world, and it's growing every single day. So this is a really, this is not just something that is like, wouldn't this be a great idea? It's something that's taking root, and I'm really excited that we have such a fantastic example, some such fantastic examples on this panel of what it looks like in action. Because depending on where you live, whether you're in Ecuador or Peru or United States or Aotearoa, it looks really different. So I'm just going to give you a quick snapshot of what it looks like here in the US, where we have a lot further to go, where this movement is really about, we don't have a Supreme Court that's like, rights of nature, yes, let's implement that at the national level. We don't have a constitutional convention coming up where we can bring that in. But what we do have are communities who are pushing this forward, and we have tribes in particular, tribal nations across Turtle Island that are saying, yes, this is how we transform Western law to look like the laws of the natural world and indigenous understanding of our relationship with nature and with the sacred. Um, so Casey Camp Hornick was, we worked with her. She's our founding um, board chair and directs our indigenous programs and was the first to lead her tribe in the Ponca Nation of Oklahoma, which is in a fossil fuel epicenter, to recognize the rights of nature and later the rights of rivers in her territory. In the middle of this fossil fuel epicenter, to say, no, not here, we're shifting what that means. And it's not just that we've, passed the law. It's that, we're like, oh, we've written the law and now we're leaving and moving on to the next place. How do we actually bring in Indigenous just transition? How do we actually transform what that looks like with, uh, agroecology and job transformation and everything else that that comes with where we really want to see ourselves in the future. How does rights of nature participate in that? And so that ongoing work that we've been doing, that I'm sorry Julie wasn't here to talk about today, was is so important because the Ponca Nation there are about 2,000 people living in the Ponca Nation. It's very small, but there are 39 tribes throughout the Oklahoma and more throughout the Plains area, the Plains region of Turtle Island. And part of this work is also connecting with all of those other tribes in the area to bring this idea of rights of nature and rights of rivers and the responsibility that we have to protect those ecosystems, and to do that together, because we're going to have to make this transformation together. In North Carolina, we're working with another of our board members, the Okanichi Band of Saponi Nation, and Dr. Crystal Cavalier Keck, to write legislation that is currently in the State House in North Carolina. There's also legislation for rights of nature happening in New York. So if we, it's not just at the level, we're starting to push up at the state and to the federal levels. Our emerging leadership program is working with youth in the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe of Massachusetts, who before we connected with them had recognized the rights of herring, their keystone species, and are working with state and federal not just legislators but agencies to ensure that using the principles of the rights of nature, they can protect the ability of the herring to really reemerge and to come back. And that's, those are youth leading that work. So there's so much exciting work happening across Turtle Island, and certainly around the world. There's so many things, and being as Osprey and I are both part of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, and the tribunals that international tribunals that really bring this framework to come to life around the world, and to also look at things like carbon trading, and what that is the exact opposite of rights of nature. So really bringing awareness to the solutions are out there, and it doesn't that are absolutely not about privatizing nature, but really committing our humanity to to the cause of becoming one with the rest of the sacred and the living system of life. So it's a pleasure to be here and to share a little bit about our work and to hear from these other amazing speakers. So thank you, Osprey, again for letting me join today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shannon. Really appreciate the incredible work you're doing. Fantastic to hear about it. And we'll definitely do another round for all of you to speak who are on the panel. But I do want to move forward to hear from Mary Lutz. And while she's coming online, I want, if we could please put into the chat, at COP28, Shannon and I delivered a Rights of Nature brief that was an update on the rights of nature movement in relationship to the climate crisis, but it also could be interesting for our audience because it gives a global view of what's happened in the last several years in terms of victories with rights of natures and really naming different cases. So if my team could kindly put that report in the chat, people might find that interesting sort of as a summary of a lot of the work that's going on. So thank you for that. And I'm super honored to bring Mary Lutz into the conversation. And again, to congratulate you for your Goldman Prize award. Really exciting. You have the floor.
Hola, buenas tardes. No voy a sacar pantalla porque acá tenemos dificultad con el internet.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm not going to go on camera because I'm having trouble with my internet. I'll share a bit about my organization and what we've been working on as women in our organization. After more than 50 years of oil exploitation and contamination of the river and the territory where we live, we organized ourselves to protect our rivers and our land as Native peoples, asking for respect and stopping these actions. We did a lot of different mobilizations and protests and strikes in our area to defend our rivers from the constant oil spills in the Marañón River in the Amazon region. And we were never able to do it. They weren't listening to us, and things remained the same. For more than 50 years, we didn't have any basic services, but now we're seeing that the general population has a lot of illnesses that we suffer from because we don't have proper medical care. We also don't have sufficient education. Our river, the Marañón River, was declared not proper for human consumption. So we also weren't able to eat the fish from that river. And as Native peoples, our rivers are sacred to us because we live from water. We all drink water, and it's a human right to have access to clean water. All humans around the world, we consume water, and so do our plants and animals. And so we made a decision to stop all of this contamination. And we brought forth a lawsuit with the support of lawyers. We did some advocacy, we brought our case, and they ruled in our favor in the first court. And then there was an appeal from the government. The government sued us. And we continued with our legal fight, and then the Second Circuit Court also ruled in our favor. And now the Marañón River has been declared as a rights holder with the same rights as people. And we have also had to sustain ourselves as Native peoples in our worldview, Ukama Kukamidia. For us, the river has a spirit. It is our mother, as we say. And there are other beings that also need this type of respect. And we say that our worldview is a reality. It's not a myth, it's not a legend. It is a reality for us. And we are very close with water, with the rivers. They're like places where our family members live. Our ancestors are below the water, we say. And so we need to live alongside them. And that's why we consider our world here is something that goes alongside the world that is below the water. And all plants, all trees, every life that exists for the Kukama people has the same spirit as humans. And that's why we demanded respect for nature. We wanted to protect nature because without it, we human beings would not exist. Because our rivers give us life, they give us water to drink, and our Amazon also gives us clean air to breathe. That is our mother. And it also gives clean air to the whole world. So that's why we ask everyone to join wherever they are in different countries around the world, including in developed countries. We want us to all join together as good human beings, as good people. But there are, of course, people who only think of destroying nature. And from that, well, we got to protect ourselves from that. We have to be very careful. And also respect what we have. It's important. If we don't have water, if we didn't have rivers and fresh water, well, how would we nourish ourselves? How would the plants be nourished? We wouldn't have food on our tables because we eat fruits and vegetables and that are also nourished by that water. And the animals themselves, of course, consume the water. For example, bees actually consume water, and bees are very small, but they are great pollinizers. And thanks to them, we're able to harvest our fruits and gather our fruits and everything that we human beings consume. And so what we're doing now, we have a large effort ahead of us, and that is to implement our legal achievements that we've been able to win as an organization. And so we want to do this with the help of people who join this fight to help us to try to maintain this and ensure respect for the Amazon. Of course, there are lots of threats. We've got the mining companies, the oil companies, factory farming, and we have to take care and protect ourselves from this, because if it continues, we won't have any hope of continuing to exist, and our children will not have a secure future. We want a safe future for future generations. And it's not just us here where we live, it's the entire world that is hanging in the balance here. And so for me, my suggestion, my request is that everyone join this great fight to defend nature and life. The life that God has given us to be here and live in abundance with respect for nature and respect for life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. It's wonderful to have you with us, and we really appreciate the important work that you're doing in your community and the teaching that you have for the world and the example from what you have done in Peru. So thank you so much for being with us. I wanted to also share as part of this panel that some of us have been working on a draft concept for a global initiative for a universal declaration on the rights of nature, because we also realize with all this momentum, we have the opportunity to start having a larger demand from world governments. It's really time, because we don't have the leeway to not really think of bold, big, transformative visions. And so we have a document that I'd love to have our team put into the chat. It's called A Declaration on the Rights of Nature, Pathways to Establish a Mechanism for Endorsement and Adoption by World Governments. And it's a beginning roadmap that we're beginning to be in discussion with parliamentarians and different leaders about how can we actually build momentum for governments to negotiate around a rights of nature agreement. And we're really excited about this because there's no holding back here. This is time for transformative policies. And we think this is one of the most important ones. If we could change the legal frameworks globally so that people lived within planetary boundaries and respected the natural laws of the earth. So this is something that we will be bringing to the UN General Assembly in September. We will be bringing this to COP30 and continuing the advocacy for this larger framing. So we're working at a community level, at a national level, but also an international level. I also wanted to highlight something that Shannon brought forward, which is many of us who are part of the Global Alliance for Rights of Nature have for many years now, I think close to a decade, been conducting rights of nature tribunals, in which we often do them parallel to the UN climate talks to show an alternative modality of how we could be conducting our frameworks for managing these multiple crises. And they have been very, very powerful, and they have resulted in actual on-the-ground change. And we have seen that even though they're not legally binding, they create an educational framework, but also impetus and political power. And we will be hosting a Rights of Nature Tribunal at COP30 in Belém, Brazil. So this is also part of our collective pathway to going to Brazil, is to have a Rights of Nature Tribunal where we will have different cases and case studies around violations of rights of nature and what are the remedies for this. So I wanted to let folks know that. I'm sure that we will be live streaming the tribunal from COP30. And if you sign on to our newsletter, you'll be hearing more about that and staying in touch with the other leaders here. So I would like to go back to Callie and bring you back online to really, the question I really have for all of you is about what you really see as the next breakthrough in your work. And it could include also some challenges that you might be facing, but also, where you're taking the projects you're doing or the vision that you have. What's your next step so we can really be up to date with your work? And please, you have the floor, Callie.
Thank you so much. It was so inspiring to hear the other panelists. I think regarding next steps for the work in Panama, as someone actually mentioned in the chat, there have been some questions brought to the table regarding the implementation of the rights of nature in Panama, specifically regarding mining concessions and consultation of indigenous peoples. And so I think one of my goals really on a national level in Panama is continuing to support in whatever way possible, whether that's like local people or the government itself, and really interpreting the rights of nature law and learning how we can have an evolution of society while still upholding the rights of nature. The two Supreme Court cases that I mentioned are currently, there's some like rumblings of them wanting to be contested. And so I think the next few years will be really interesting in Panama to see what happens. I'm also hoping to collaborate with WECAN and GARN and all others interested on this UN Universal Declaration of a Rights of Nature initiative. I've asked Panama if they would be interested in being one of the sponsors to whatever degree possible of an initiative like this. And so that proposal is currently under revision. And I'm really excited about this National Geographic program as well. I think scientists many times can be scared and intimidated to step outside of that objective data bubble that we sometimes live in. And I think part of my role and something that's really made me passionate about the work that I do is understanding that local peoples and oftentimes scientists that are studying certain endangered species and ecosystems, we're seeing what's happening firsthand to these threatened natural places. And so we really have that responsibility to raise our voices. And I feel like for me, the data sets that I collect are the tools in my toolkit that I can bring to the table to a decision maker to help them understand very objectively and tangibly how nature is being affected by current environmental law and the very tangible ways in which current environmental law is failing to adequately protect nature. I think science can be a great tool to do that. And so with this National Geographic program, I'm hoping to collaborate with at least 10 other scientists and our local leaders from around the world, and fund their work to be able to generate or utilize data sets, or sets of local ecological information, to generate new rights of nature proposals in areas where the rights of nature isn't currently recognized either on a local, regional, or national level. So I'm so excited about that because we'll not only be supporting and funding this work, but there'll also be the Impact Story Lab, which is one of the documentary kind of branches of Nat Geo, which will be hoping to tell some of these stories of these local frontline leaders. In addition to the educational department of National Geographic, will be supporting some of our work as a community and communicating about the rights of nature. So I think these are kind of the three things that I'm personally really passionate about, working with Panama on the ground to continue implementing successfully, also collaborating with scientists and seeing if we can bring this to the UN.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Really great to hear about your plans and going forward. And now I'd love to hand the floor over to you, Shannon, with the same question about where you see your work going, obstacles or visions going forward, your plans. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Some of the stuff I can't really talk about, but as you know, when you work with Indigenous peoples, some of the big announcements aren't really ours to share, but there are some really amazing things happening. One of the things I can talk about certainly is that the Plains-wide Coalition development around the rights of rivers. We've been working for the last 4 years in the Plains, having in Oklahoma these very localized meetings led by Indigenous communities there, and are called the convenings of the four winds, which collate to the four directions. And the next really exciting step that we have is bringing the people who were most active in those coalitions and the people who have been other people in the area who've been so inspired by the work that that the Ponca and others have been doing to come together to build a powerful coalition in the Plains area, and to come together to really build a block of Indigenous communities working together around around the rights of nature, around protecting the rights of their rivers. Another exciting piece is that we've been looking at how the young people have so much to offer, and we see it everywhere in the climate justice movement. And there are globally young people engaged in the rights of nature, but we're really looking at developing this emerging leaders program of Indigenous youth, to how can we help contribute to this particular age group to really invest in them and their future in the rights of nature. So that's a really exciting piece of our work. And globally, along with Osprey as part of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, we you know, as we said, we have the tribunal coming up on at COP30 in Brazil, and the growth of the Indigenous Council of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature is really working on, you know, a document and a call to action for all Indigenous people to really bring more energy and leadership and power of this Indigenous-led movement, you know, to the fore as a global call to action for everyone. So there's so much happening everywhere. It's hard to just you know, limit it to a couple of things, but there's other stuff happening, but we'll talk about that later. Thank you.
Okay, good. Well, good to know that there's things cooking and coming our way. And I did want to mention that Casey Camp Hornick from the Ponca Nation is the chair of the Indigenous Council of the Global Alliance for Rights of Nature, which is really exciting. And some of you who are with us the first day of the assembly got to hear from Casey, and she will be joining us tomorrow for a panel tomorrow. So we're really excited to hear from her. And, you know, just wanted to honor her today because she is the chair of the Indigenous Council of Global Alliance for Rights of Nature. And they have been just growing and blooming. And they were at the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues and had an amazing event there, bringing Indigenous leaders together from all over the world around rights of nature issues. And yeah, this leadership of Casey's has been really incredible. And with that, I would like to bring Mary Lutz back into the conversation and ask you, Mary Lutz, sort of what are your next steps with your work and your vision for rights of nature going forward in Peru? Thank you. If you could take the floor.
Nosotros tenemos nuestro plan como organización de mujeres.
We have our plan of organization with women. We want to train young women, get them ready so that they continue this work. And also besides that, besides training the youth, we are preparing training about the value of nature, of the importance of planting seeds, and that knowing, observing how they grow, they give us more oxygen so that we can breathe. We are reforesting different plant species. We have 23,000 already. We want to continue this activity, which is very important. And we also want to make sure not only planting, but also to have on our list and register our plants and our seedlings so that no deforestation or logging company comes in to cut down our plants. Because we are planting wood, plant and fruit trees and wood trees, and that are gonna be very valuable for us, not only for the economy, but to give us oxygen. We're not gonna cut them. We're going to maintain them. All that space that we have in our community, we are maintaining. We're taking care of it, preserving it for the future generations. Because we have the experience in our land, in the Rio Marañón, a piece of land that was very big, which is now protected. It's a national reserve, 2,400 million hectares, now are part of the government of Peru and has become a protected reserve. But despite this, they still give concessions to companies to drill oil inside of the reserve. If they hadn't taken away our land would be complete, it would be intact. We know how to protect it and save it. And that bad experience that we had, because now they don't let us go in there and take anything. They don't let us fish or hunt. We're taking care of the land that we have besides our community. It's fundamental to ensure that these lands are protected. to ensure that the rivers and the land are protected and to defend our own life. That's what I wanted to share.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mary Lutz, for your incredible work and your dedication. And we had just had a panel earlier today about land defenders in the Latin American region. So I also know that you approach this work with a lot of courage, because it takes a lot of courage to stand up for the land with threats and violence and criminalization against land defenders in your region. I know that that is a big challenge, and I want to thank you for your courage and your leadership, and again, for the victory that you have had, the leadership that you have, and I'm really glad that the Goldman Prize recognized you. And so with that, I want to go ahead and close out our Rights of Nature panel. It's really been great to be with all of you. We really wanted to spotlight
Muchas
the
gracias por
incredible work
invitarme y
of
poder
Rights of Nature in
compartir lo
our
poco, ¿no?
assembly.
Muchísimas gracias a todos los
Still
organizadores.
having a breakthrough with the interpretation. Oh, thank you. We're really glad to have you here. Thank you, Mary Lutz. So we're really thrilled to have had this opportunity to bring Rights of Nature to the Assembly. As we've all been sharing, it's one of the fastest growing environmental movements in the world. And this is a key component of what we're looking at when we're talking about the just transition and how we're going to move from the current legal frameworks, current economy, into a world that we know is fair and just and ecologically integrous with the natural laws of the earth. And so I'm really thankful we have this opportunity to be with everyone. We have put all the links to these amazing speakers in the chat to follow their work and continue this conversation. And with that, we're going to close this panel. And again, thank you all for being with us. Take care, Mary Lutz. We think of you, we stand with you, and all of the speakers. Thank you so much.